Ian Bremmer is the founder and president of Eurasia Group, a global political risk consulting company, and he joins me now to discuss the foreign policy implications of President-elect Donald Trump accepting this phone call and also tweeting afterwards. Now, I think when we heard that he had accepted this phone call, there was a conversation about whether he just sort of stumbled into it or whether it was well planned. Do you think there was strategy here?
Well, there was strategy by someone. It wasn't by Trump. I mean, clearly, you put together a call with the president of a country. You got to get on the schedule. It has to get approved. I mean, the janitor off the street isn't calling Trump randomly and getting on the schedule, at least not that we know of. Right. And there are people around Trump in the transition team that are very strongly pro-Taiwan. Steve Yates, in particular, used to be Asia policy advisor to Vice President Cheney, would have loved to make this happen and was involved. But there's no question in my mind that Trump was not aware, when he took the call, that there hadn't been a conversation by a president or president-elect with a Taiwanese president for 40 years.
You think that he didn't realize that?
I'm certain of that, because if he had been aware, Kellyanne Conway would not have sent out a note immediately afterwards saying, hey, no policy was made, he just accepted a congratulatory call. If they were trying to make policy and set a statement, he would have immediately responded with the China is XYZ, and we don't like that, and we support Taiwan. So there was clearly incoherence, lack of communication here. By the end of the day, now he's then saying, okay, well, we've got to hit China on a bunch of things. But that's playing defense. That's Mr. Trump never gets anything wrong, and so I've got to own this, and how am I going to do that? This was not everyone sit down. They don't have an Asia team yet. Right. They don't have a Secretary of State designee yet. They have none of that stuff. So they clearly can't yet have an Asia strategy. Okay. Right now, they're accepting calls.
I want to talk a little bit about the follow-up tweets, but first I want to get your take on the way the transition team sort of dealt with it. And they sort of played it down. It was it almost made it sound like the call came in without him knowing, but we know now that that doesn't happen and that it must have been planned, but they sort of downplayed the call. What do you make of that strategy?
The fact that Trump himself was not aware of the fact that this was going to cause a serious fracas with the Chinese president. I mean, Trump does watch cable news. Trump is on Twitter. He understood as soon as the headline was made that this was a big deal. He wasn't expecting it to be a big deal. He thought it was going to be yet another conversation that Trump was having with a well-wisher and someone that wants to congratulate the wonderful Trump for being president.
It was just an attempt to sort of protect him from looking bad?
Oh, absolutely. I think they're just playing. I mean, Kellyanne Conway, we have seen very clearly that, like when she went after Romney, she's not doing this by herself. She's doing this because Trump's telling her to. She's a pro. She's been around the block more than a couple times. So if she's saying, hey, this isn't policy, it's because Trump is saying, whoa, what is this? Fix it. Okay. And that's what she did.
Okay, so then let's talk about the foreign policy implications. Is this as seismic as some would have us think it is?
Well, the election of Trump is that seismic. The call with the Taiwanese president isn't that seismic, but it's indicative of why the bigger thing is seismic, which is that, you have something that is completely beyond the pale in foreign policy that was done in an ad hoc and accidental way. It's not the only time that's going to happen. Some of it is incompetence and lack of coordination. Some of it is the media going after him because that's what the media does. And some of it is concerns about conflicts of interest, which you can't will away, even if they have no such intention, just as with the Clinton Foundation, because other countries want to promote those, right? I mean, it's not an accident that the Philippine president put the head of Trump's partnership in the Philippines as his special envoy to the United States and immediately sent him to New York to meet with the family. Now, you can say, well, that's not going to get any favors. That's not the way we do policy. But it don't matter. That's the perception, and that's the way other countries are going to act. So this is uncharted waters, and it's uncharted waters for a president for whom foreign policy is not a top priority. It's uncharted waters for a United States that actually has a much more challenging negotiating environment internationally than we do in getting things done in Congress. So for all of those reasons, this is going to be a real problem.
So what do we know about how China is reacting to this?
Well, I was in Beijing a week ago, and at that point, none of the serious leaders knew Trump or the people around him, and so they were cautious. they were somewhat optimistic because, number one, they see Trump as a businessman that, doesn't care about human rights, wants to get business deals done. Hey,
right.
China's give that a shot. But more importantly, they see Trump as someone who is not interested in the pivot to Asia, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, all of this strength of U.S. alliances. If the Japanese and South Koreans aren't doing more, he doesn't care. Well, China sees that as wide open territory for them to be the economic leaders and increasingly the military leaders in Asia. So they like that. And that was the triumphalist speech that you saw from Xi Jinping at the APEC summit in Lima when President Obama canceled his speech at the last minute. Now, following this Taiwan episode and Trump's tweets doubling down on China as currency manipulator, military, sort of hegemon aspirant in the region, that kind of thing. The Chinese aren't going to like that at all. And they're not yet sure what to make of it. I'm sure there are people in Beijing that are saying, hey, if he likes Taiwan because they give him a hotel deal, is there a cheap way we can buy this guy? So I'm sure that's happening, but I also think that Taiwan is a complete red line for Xi Jinping. And if this continues, if Trump is like, hey, I talked to the president once, I'm going to call her again because I'm not going to back down, this is going to start U.S.-China relations off in a disastrous way. And that's not something you want to do when A, you don't care much about foreign policy, and B, none of your allies in the region, except from Japan, think that you're in any way worth working with. That's a problem.
Ian Bremmer, thank you so much for joining us.
Sure.